President Trump, he is pushing immigration reform.
A 70-point plan.
These are slides, building that border wall. Mandatory E-Verify, and a new points-based system for green card.
He promised it, and he's doing it, unlike I said, like any president we've ever had in the history of our country.
Vice President Mike Pence has just left the Indianapolis Colts game after football players took a knee during the national anthem.
This is not surprising. I mean, the president stands for the national anthem. He stands with the American people.
Stephen Paddock's brother is now in Las Vegas talking to the FBI, trying to help them find out the motive.
Could there have been any law passed that would have stopped him?
No.
Right now, there are reports of people hiding inside of their wineries in Northern California.
We're in survival mode. Don't take any chances. Don't get hurt. That from the sheriff across the police scanner in Napa right now.
President Trump tweeting moments ago about North Korea.
The economic noose is tightening around North Korea. That's the most significant progress any president has ever had in dealing with this issue.
New York City, take a look. It's a federal holiday, but Kellyanne Conway, Counselor to the President of the United States, is working. Good morning to you.
Got it. I'm in the swing state of Manhattan.
Last time you were here, your phone was ringing, remember?
I do.
It's written up in the press.
Yeah. A very special guest, my boss.
So there's so much going on. I mean, people were focused on tax reform a couple of weeks ago and said that's up next after health care was a big letdown. Now, all of a sudden, immigration is front and center. First, Senator Langford came out, Senator Flake came out. But last night, I think over the weekend, it became clear the administration wants to take the lead on this.
Yes, and last night we had an open press call. Many people invited to that, Capitol Hill, the press. We'll see if the press is covering it today because it's a huge immigration proposal. Yes, it deals with DACA, which of course is on the minds of many Democrats and some Republicans, but it also deals with the president's first priorities, which is to keep us all safe and secure. It would have 300 new immigration judges, 1,000 ICE agents, because one of the major challenges we still have is what to do with folks who are trying to cross the border illegally. We also want the safe return of children who are coming over unaccompanied, the unaccompanied minors. We want them to go home safely and securely. We also want to build that border wall, full construction of the border wall, funding for it. We're going to limit chain migration to spouses and children because it's not fair to the American worker. And you know, for years, this country, including Capitol Hill and the Swamp, they've always asked, what more can we do for the illegal immigrant? What's fair to the illegal immigrant? This president is asking, what's fair to America? What's fair to the American worker? What's fair to the American community?
So yesterday, the White House sent a 70-point plan to Congress and said, okay, these are the things on our list, including complete construction of the wall, not just a little hunk of it. 70 points. You're not going to get all 70. So really, this is the opening bid. Democrats, you want the DACA Dreamer program. This is what we want with national security.
Well, what we're reminding everybody, Steve, is how complex the issue is and how long it's been a multi-layered challenge for this nation, how long it's been ignored. Talk about looking the other way at something so critically important. Also, this particular legislative package was done in concert with Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, Department of Labor. There are many different agencies and departments.
Border Patrol.
Border Patrol, of course, ICE. And we had representatives of many of those departments and agencies on the phone call last night, along with our legislative team, so that anybody who wanted to ask questions could. What I think is remarkable today is the crickets you hear about a major legislative initiative being put forth by the President of the United States and his administration to Congress. Instead, they want to continue to cover palace intrigue.
And he said, this is what Chuck Schumer says, we told the president at our meeting that we're open to reasonable border security measures along with the DREAM Act, but this list goes so far beyond what is reasonable.
Well, I'd like to know what Chuck Schumer thinks is reasonable, because you almost every day, every week certainly, have somebody on who's lost loved ones because an illegal immigrant has murdered them or killed them, or I've stood shoulder to shoulder. I've met these families. The president, more importantly, has acknowledged them. And if we would just enforce the laws that exist, if we would stop providing sanctuary to folks who have been deported multiple times, broken the law multiple times, if we would lift up the American worker, raise their pay, if we would make sure that simple things, you know, what's reasonable. The president has been very clear about that too. All the drugs coming over the border has to stop. And I'd like to know what Senator Schumer thinks is reasonable when we just see the statistics in terms of people flouting the law. It sounds like he's only talking about DACA. We really hope that he realizes
it's bigger than that.
What's happening. It's bigger than that. Our Border Patrol agents, they don't have enough resources.
There's 1,500 unaccompanied minors this year alone.
Yeah, it's dangerous for them.
What about the Dreamers? Because a lot of them are watching the program this morning. They're worried that they're going to be sent home. Nancy and Chuck, as the president would call them, he met with them, I guess, a few weeks ago, and they were trying to work out a compromise. He said, I'll let the Dreamers stay, possibly, if you give me funding for the entire wall. We want to build the whole wall. What's your message to the Dreamers that are watching, that are fearful that they're going to be deported?
The message to the Dreamers is that, listen to what the president says. He says he's open to a deal, open to figuring out a way to have a broader immigration policy that certainly addresses DACA, the so-called Dreamer program, but along with all these other critical functions. So they should actually be calling their friends Chuck and Nancy to say, you know, are you going to give up this deal because you don't want to, why don't you want a border wall constructed? Why don't you want more immigration judges and agents, and why isn't a reasonable policy to limit chain migration, and also to stop these visa overstays, and to make sure people that are flouting the law once they're here, go back.
The debate starts today. All right. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about what happened yesterday. He was the governor of the great state of Indiana. Mike Pence returned home for the Indianapolis Colts and the 49ers game. As it turns out, a couple dozen members of the San Francisco 49ers took a knee during the anthem. And the president tweeted out, I asked Vice President Pence to leave stadium if any players kneel, disrespecting our country. I'm proud of him, and Second Lady Karen. And then Adam Schiff, a Democrat from the great state of California, said, after all this involving unnecessarily expensive travel by cabinet secretaries, how much taxpayer money was wasted on this stunt? That seems to be a political talking point. The Democrats are saying this was a political stunt. He in Las Vegas went to Indianapolis to make this statement.
Well, Peyton Manning was being honored before the game. He was there for the pregame. Let me tell you something. I've known the Vice President and Mrs. Pence for a decade, probably 20 years. I've worked with them for a decade, including when he was governor. It takes a lot to get that man's blood boiling. And to refer to somebody who's standing up for the flag and all it represents to hundreds of millions of Americans and all it signals to the world, our veterans, our unity, the founding of our great nation, to call that a political stunt is truly outrageous, egregious, and offensive.
It was on the books already, right?
When there's the books, but let me just say this. When Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana, there were many times that he had to receive go and comfort and console the family of a fallen soldier. He was helping to receive the remains of our brave men and women. And those coffins are all draped in a flag. And this is a man who said he doesn't think it's too much to stand. I want to give a little lighthearted note here. Brent Musburger, of course, legendary sportscaster, said to Twitter last night that somehow since these 49ers have started this, they've won 2 games. So maybe they should take a knee in the other team's end zone. And did you see in the prompter, Steve, it says the Giants are 0-5?
Right. That hurts
I just
my
said Philadelphia
feelings.
Eagles.
Why would you say that? And you know I went to the game yesterday.
Because I'm an Eagles fan.
And you know Gavin Haddon, who's the interim executive producer, he's a Giant fan. Yeah, he's a Giant fan.
We have to stop. I want to say something seriously. We keep on focusing on the very few, the handful of folks who take the knee, who raise their fist. Let's talk about, especially to our children watching, let's talk about to the next generations what the flag means. We're talking about why the protesters are there. They're coming tomorrow to be heralded as the NHL. Oh, the flag, I still think, is the most cohesive, unifying symbol in our nation, Ainsley, at a time when we feel very fractured and divided ideologically, geographically, and the like, and politically. And I was just in Nashville over this weekend for a night with my daughter and her friend, and you go somewhere like that, the flag is everywhere. It's just a symbol of everybody. I don't know anybody's politics while I see them holding up the flag, walking down the streets. It's a symbol everywhere.
When did the Vice President and the President talk about doing this?
Well, they talk every day, and they've talked about this issue.
This out last week.
Well, but hold on, they talk every day, and they certainly have talked about this issue. And as Brian said, the Vice President and the Second Lady going to the Colts game has been on the books for a very long time.
It was
and so they discussed
Las Vegas had happened.
That's right. They what they do is they discuss upcoming travel. The vice president and the second lady were in Puerto Rico, for example.
So instead of canceling it, he knew he was going to have to leave. If the plan was to leave, if the president said leave if they take a knee, he knew he was going to have to do that because the 49ers are notorious.
I'm sure the vice president and the president also see that the polls are on their side. I mean, most Americans say they stand for the flag and all it represents. I'm just not going to disparage the brave men and women in uniform who do things I'm not capable of.
All right, so I will say, and obviously Peyton Manning's number only gets once, and he means so much to people of Indiana especially. Now let's talk about what's going on with Senator Corker and the President of the United States. A Twitter war yesterday. These two were once very good friends. Now they're going at it personally. In fact, this is what Corker says. It's a shame that the White House has become an adult daycare center. This Twitter exchange. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning. What a demeaning tweet at the president.
Well, it is, and world leaders see that. We've all worked with Senator Corker over the years. We thank him for service. And tweets like this to be incredibly irresponsible. It adds to the insulting that the mainstream media and the president's detractors, almost a year after this election, they still can't accept the election results. It adds to their ability and their cover to speak about a president of the United States, the president of the United States, in ways that no president should be talked about. And also, I prefer to express myself privately.
Especially, he has a relationship with the president. He's cell phone.
I think that's
first of all, he was in the White House 2 weeks ago for a private meeting. So that door has been open. We are relying upon Senator Corker, but so are the people of Tennessee for him to get big things done in the remaining months of his tenure. He's announced his retirement, but as head of a very important committee, I think that comments like this are less helpful than saying, I don't like X, Y, or Z, but I support the president on tax reform. We're going to look at this Iran deal. You know, conservatives have not really forgiven Bob Corker, Senator Corker,
for he actually passed a referendum that allowed it to pass without the majority of votes in the Senate.
That's
right.
He
only got 42 votes for this.
And it did. That's right. The Iran deal, by many accounts, including this president who ran against the former Secretary of State in part on the Iran deal, and is looking very seriously at it right now as the certification process comes due again. But this president has said from the beginning it was a bad deal. It hurts Americans. They paid blood money for these hostages, and the fact is that this president has wanted to work with Senator Corker, Chairman Corker, on looking at this. But conservatives are very upset with Senator Corker for allowing that to go to a vote. Look, I just am. I know I'm very public. I go on TV, etc. I speak on behalf of the president, but I still come from a background where you express yourself privately, and this president has the most open door policy to our senators and our members of Congress that I think anybody's ever seen. But what this does too is look at what the mainstream media are all covering this morning. This was their top story instead of the 70-point immigration plan. What's next on tax reform?
Bob Corker needs to look at the approval rating of Congress right now.
Well, it's in the tank. It's in the tank because look, they finally have their chance, Ainsley. They have a president who's willing to sign into law all these things they've been voting on all these years. And they ought to do that. I mean, they just ought to pass a couple things already.
Kellyanne, thanks for joining us on this federal holiday.
Thank you.
Do you get overtime?
Happy Columbus Day.
Oh, okay. All right, coming up on this Monday, a Fox News alert. The video is bets are off at the flooded Mississippi casino after tropical depression Nate soaked the South. We're live on the ground with the very latest.
And forget guns. Saturday Night Live suggests parents learn karate to protect their families. NRA spokesman Dana Lash up next. All right, we got a Fox News alert right now at 17 after the hour. Nate slammed the Gulf Coast as a Category 1 hurricane, leaving behind a trail of destruction.
It is now a tropical depression moving north and threatening to dump more heavy rain.
That rain today here in the Northeast. Meanwhile, Ellison Barber joins us live from Biloxi, Mississippi, where they have had so much water. Hey, Ellison.
They really have. A lot of the casinos seem to have gotten the bulk of that. There are thousands of people still without power this morning, most of them in Alabama. Officials there say about 7,000 people in the Mobile area are without power. Here in Mississippi, Mississippi Power says everyone who lost power during the hurricane has it back. One of the most noticeable things left behind is this boat right here on the beach behind me. It's been stuck here since Sunday morning. For the most part, this hurricane caused very minimal damage here in Biloxi and also in Alabama and Louisiana. But this boat washed up on shore. A local news outlet is actually reporting that that boat belongs to a woman and her fiance. She is, according to their reports, living in Orlando with her family while her husband is overseas. She noticed a local reporter tweeting, showing that boat on Facebook and said, "Hey, I think that's my boat." The local news outlet is reporting that she's making plans to try and travel and assess some of the damage. But apparently she and her fiance normally live on this boat right here. About half a mile from where we're standing are a number of casinos. One casino that took a lot of water, particularly in their lobby, is the Golden Nugget Casino and Hotel. Storm surge came into that lobby there. It cleared out, and we're told there's actually relatively little lasting damage inside of that casino, but that is one of at least 3 casinos that had some sort of flooding. For a lot of other places, the flooding took place in the parking deck. This is the first hurricane to hit the state of Mississippi since Hurricane Katrina back in 2005.
We did not dodge a bullet in Mississippi. We got hit head on at night by a Category 1 storm. If that same storm, if Nate would have hit us 15 years ago, the damage would have been much more extensive.
Steve Ansley and Brian, officials here in Mississippi keep referring to Katrina. They say we did a whole lot of work after that hit us, and that's why we were ready for this storm this weekend, and that's why things aren't nearly as bad as they could have been. Back to you guys.
So they learned from history, from the past.
They did, indeed. All right.
Thanks, Allison.
All right, straight ahead, Saturday Night Live turning into a lecture on guns.
You can't hit what you're shooting with 6 bullets, then you don't need to be shooting at it. Learn karate or use your words.
Karate or use your words. NRA national spokesperson Dana Lash here to respond to that, coming up next.
Then she leaked thousands of classified documents to WikiLeaks when she was a man. But Chelsea Manning says that's not the full story. You got to hear this.
Good Monday morning. We're back with some quick headlines, starting with Fox News alert. Raging wildfires forcing mass evacuations in California's wine country. It's so bad, the Napa County Sheriff issuing this warning to his crew, saying, quote, "We are in survival mode. Don't take any chances." Firefighters battling hundreds of acres. Windy and dry conditions are fueling the flames, with wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour in some areas. Harvey Weinstein's film company might not bear his name any longer. Reports this morning the company he co-founded with his brother, the Weinstein Company, will change its name. Known as one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, Weinstein was fired from the company over accusations he sexually harassed female coworkers for decades. And cities across are planning to protest on this Columbus Day. Activists in New York City promising to shut down the parade, saying explorer Christopher Columbus doesn't deserve the honor. Dozens of cities will instead be celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. Steve?
All right. Thank you very much, Jillian. Punchlines get political at Saturday Night Live on Saturday night, turned into a late-night lecture on guns.
No, you're not allowed to have 40 guns anymore. From now on, you can have 1 gun, max, and 6 bullets. If you can't hit what you're shooting with 6 bullets, then you don't need to be shooting at it. Learn karate or use your words.
Here is reaction to Saturday Night Live on this Monday morning. We've got National NRA spokesperson Dana Lash joining us from Dallas today. Dana, good morning to you.
Steve, good morning to you.
Okay, so you don't need guns. Just learn karate or use your words.
Yeah, karate or words. I'm certainly not going to take any kind of firearm lecture from people who clearly don't own them or have never even fired them and don't even understand the concept of self-defense either. This idea that you're going to have a 6-round limit, and then they compared them to cats, Steve, because you know, people all over the United States every single day successfully defend their lives using cats.
Well, one of the things that he brought up, heard a number of people on the political left for the most part talk about, is the number of guns. I've heard them say, I can't believe the guy had 30 guns or 40 guns, whatever the number is. You know, something I would ask them is, what is the correct number of guns any American can have? Because I haven't heard anybody say an American should only have blank number of guns, or one gun, or no guns. I've heard a lot of people say no guns.
Right. Well, yeah, and I'm curious to see how they propose that to work, because you would need firearms to go door to door to houses all over the United States, millions of Americans, and confiscate firearms. And to that point, Steve, there are millions of Americans all throughout the country that own multiple firearms, and some of them, yes, 40 firearms. And you know what? They've been owning these 40 firearms for decades, and millions of law-abiding Americans who have not done anything. Firearm owners, concealed carriers, they're the most law-abiding group. And that's the thing. Evil lives among us. And I've said this before. It's real. You have to deal with evil. And I certainly want to be prepared to deal with evil or a monster with the ability to defend myself, as opposed to not having that ability to defend myself. And people like Michael, who do their show over at SNL, and where they have armed security, they have the luxury of being able to tell everyone else to disarm, because it's class warfare. These individuals can afford private security. They work in a building that's with armed guards, and you know that for one single day without those armed guards. Why don't you give up the firearms that your private security is holding? You're not being more virtuous just because you're paying someone else to carry it. You're outsourcing it because you lack the courage of your own convictions.
Did you see Dianne Feinstein was on one of the Sunday chat shows yesterday, and she was asked, are there any laws that would have prevented what happened in Las Vegas? And she said no.
Yeah. She said no because, and I can't even believe my words or my mouth is making these words. She was right on that. There's nothing that could have been done, unfortunately, to prevent this tragedy. You know, and I know that this investigation is ongoing, and I don't want to get ahead of the law enforcement that's involved in this right now. But usually with individuals, there are some sort of red flags, and I'm just curious as to what sort of vibe, what sort of red flags that this individual was putting out. I mean, I look at James Hodgkinson. Immediately after that tragedy, nobody really knew his MO, and it took a while for that information to come out that he was targeting on political ideology. But then people started talking about the red flags that were popping up about this guy, and sooner or later the truth will out.
Right, exactly. Although people who knew this guy can't figure out what those red flags were. I want one. We're going to play by for you, Dana. Here is Steve Schmidt, who was for a while John McCain when he was running for president, chief strategist. Here he is on HBO on Friday night.
The founding fathers, though, they could no more conceive of an AK-47 or an AR-15 firing on full automatic than they could have conceived of a spaceship. It is harder to buy cough medicine than it is to buy an AK-47 or 50 of them.
Is that true? It's harder to buy cough medicine than it is to buy an AK-47 or 50 of them?
No, and by his logic, you would have to buy cough medicine that's actually really old. I mean, pre-1986 is how old that cough syrup would have to be, and then you have to get law enforcement approval and spend thousands of dollars. That's completely inaccurate. And he's just not speaking from any position of experience, so I'm not quite sure why he's chiming in on the law here. But no, you have to go through many steps, in fact, to be able to do that. And for his point, Steve, really quickly, on the historicalness of full auto. In fact, our founding fathers were aware of it. We had the puckle gun, the knock gun, the Belton gun. The Continental Congress was getting ready to purchase a fully automatic firearm, but they were prohibited in doing so only because of cost, not because of desire. So if people actually picked up a book and understood the history about firearms, maybe they wouldn't make such silly arguments on live television. That's awful.
I hadn't heard those stories before. All right, Dana Lash from the NRA, thank you very much for joining us from Dallas.
Thank you so much.
You bet. All right, meanwhile, it's not just Saturday Night Live pushing liberal talking points.
If Trump is upset Rex Tillerson called him a moron, wait till he finds out what the rest of the country has been calling him on.
So why the turn toward the left? A Hollywood insider with an outside take coming up next. And the video is insane. A man hanging on to, he's on the front of a moving school bus. The kids inside terrified. The story behind the video coming up.
I get off the bus.
All right, it is now 26
We're
minutes
back on
before the
camera,
top
Brian.
half.
Yeah.
Brian is doing some research. You know what?
Actually, this makes sense. Jillian, you just sent me something via text that I was just looking at. So why shouldn't I toss it back to you?
Okay, that sounds good. And by the way,
tell us what you sent him.
Well, it's something I posted on Twitter, but it's this hilarious NFL on Fox video that they posted about the Giants. Anyway,
about the Giants, because the Giants are 0-5, and she finds it endlessly humorous.
Because my Eagles are 4-1. Okay, anyway, let's get to the news, though, because that's more important. So, do you remember this promise President Trump made to coal country?
You're going to see what happens. You're going to see. I get elected. You're going to see what happens. It's going to happen fast. And you're going to be back to better than ever before.
Well, he's about to deliver on it today. The administration set to make a big announcement on climate policy, scrapping former President Obama's Clean Power Plan. The EPA declaring that the rule meant to curb gas emissions exceeds federal law by setting unreasonable standards. Convicted leaker Chelsea Manning claims she didn't spill any government secrets, only history. Manning speaking at the New Yorker saying, quote, "These aren't intelligence documents. It's historical data. There's nothing sensitive in there. There's no troop movements. It was a historical record of everything that had happened in Iraq and Afghanistan." Manning spent 7 years in military prison for disclosing classified government information to WikiLeaks. President Obama commuted her sentence. All right, this video is absolutely insane. Look at your screen. An irate man clings onto a moving school bus after he says a bottle was thrown at his car. The bus driver refusing to stop.
Get off the bus. Get off the bus.
An off-duty Baltimore cop quickly stepped in to help. The man was arrested. The bus packed with middle school-aged kids. Wow. So she's played spies in movies, but it turns out Hollywood superstar Angelina Jolie may have been plotting a real-life secret mission. Website, Jolie once offered to help catch the Ugandan warlord Joseph Kony. Now the plan was to invite him to dinner so U.S. Special Forces could catch and arrest him. Well, that never happened. But according to that report, Jolie wasn't the only star in the spots. George Clooney declining an invitation to gather information on Muammar Gaddafi's Libyan regime. So there you have it. So look at your headlines.
If you made it
about
movie,
that.
Nobody would believe it.
I know.
All right. Thank you very much. By the way, Brian, I just sent you a cat video.
Because he knows.
A cat video.
Because I'm pro dog. Right.
All right. Let's bring
Grumpy
in
cat.
actress and comedian Heather Donald. Hey.
Good morning.
Let's talk a little bit about how in the olden days, I don't know if you're old enough, but I remember Johnny Carson when he would go on at 11:30 at night. Whoever was the president of the United States, you know, there was always some good-natured poking at them. But it seems like the late night hosts have taken such a turn against the president. Can you figure it out why?
Well, because they don't like him and they didn't vote for him, but they're probably secretly happy that he won because they have material every single night. And that is every show. And it does get a little tiring. There are people that would love to have a choice of watching something that could take their mind off all the turmoil that's going on in our world. And unfortunately, you can't because every single one has the same point of view. And that's the majority of the comedic material up. So that is what it is, and it's, you know, it's those the people. They have their show. It's not hard news. So if you don't want to watch it, you know, you don't have to, but that's obviously very evident.
Heather, we have a montage of what a lot of the late night talk show hosts are saying about this administration. Take a look at this and we'll get your reaction.
The White House is scaling back a rule that requires employers to cover birth control. When asked what people should do for birth control now, the White House said, think of Trump.
If Trump is upset, Rex Tillerson called him a moron. Wait till he finds out what the rest of the country has been calling him.
President Trump finally arrived in Puerto Rico this week, and let's just say, problem solved. Nothing says I understand the gravity of the situation like a billionaire tossing 6 rolls of paper towels to hurricane victims.
So, Heather, do you think it's funny? Did they do this to President Obama?
That you mean that they didn't do it to Obama? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just asking, did they do it? Is it, you know, is it fair? Did they treat past administration?
I don't remember. I don't recall them doing it. No. I mean, it's their target to do, and now they're on a roll, and that is what is getting them ratings. So they're going to do what they're going to do. I mean, you know, I did notice, as you guys did, that there was no mention of Harvey Weinstein. There was not even a one, update, Saturday Night Live update, which could have been an easy one to stick in there. I understand maybe the story came out Thursday, maybe you couldn't write a whole sketch. However, I would have liked to have seen one of their actors in that peninsula white robe hitting on Ashley Judd. I mean, that was a pretty juicy, amazing story.
I mean, Heather, they always change up into the morning, up into the actual show, and evidently they had a skit and they deleted it out. And the explanation was, it's just so New York. Really? Harvey Weinstein, the most powerful man in Hollywood, is too New York? Are you kidding?
That have a personal relationship with the Weinstein Company, or maybe they've got a movie there, or maybe they felt, it's not worth it. I mean, look, I've never tweeted about the president. I don't know. One day my son might be in a foreign country and I might need him. I don't want to know a record of me that said something nasty about him. It's not worth it. So for them, being in Hollywood, it might just not be worth it to make fun of Harvey Weinstein and the Weinstein Company.
Unbelievable. But the ratings are up slightly, but in overall, where late night used to be, they're down dramatically. And I'll say this on top of that. It's good business for them to, hit the president. But if you could balance it out, you'd have a shot at getting the other 50% of the country that doesn't hate the president. So it doesn't even make make financial sense.
I agree, and I feel like at one time, Fallon was a little bit more down the middle of the road, but it is what it is. They want to talk about this every night. There's something every night to discuss. I personally, with my comedian and my comedy and my stand-up and my podcast, Juicy Scoop with Heather McDonald, I decided about a year ago I was just not going to discuss politics, and this was a place for escapism. My social media is escapism, and that way people aren't getting in fights on my Juicy Scoop Obsessed Facebook page. That's what I like. So there's 20 other shows that you can watch if you want to watch Trump bashing shows. I feel it's a little much. I wish there was something else to watch before you went to bed.
Well, you know what?
Could just kind of take your mind off things.
They can watch your podcast. What is the website address again?
Well, they can listen to my podcast, Juicy Scoop with Heather McDonald, free everywhere.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, Heather, you are hilarious. You are so talented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Except for those jokes again about you, Ainsley. I don't think they're very funny.
I'd like to hear them.
Okay.
I'd probably laugh.
Meanwhile, straight ahead. Did you hear what Dianne Feinstein said about the Las Vegas shooter?
Could there have been any law passed that would have stopped him?
No. So what is the answer? We are live in Las Vegas as police are describing the harrowing moments as they were trying to stop that shooter.
Then the group Antifa's target on this Columbus Day, Columbus statues, but our next guest says the outrage is all wrong. Hear that. Coming up.